What's going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 2 of Veteran Owned Podcast. Today we'll be discussing benefits offered to veterans who are looking to start a business or already have one or are looking to expand. I got a lot of really good information for you guys today, and all link for the information discussed in this episode will be linked below in case you want to look into things yourself. Alright, let's get into it. Alright, so today we're going to be talking about some of the different kinds of benefits offered to veterans for small businesses. We will be going over free courses available, grants, loans, and business counselors. There's a whole lot more than these 4 things out there, but I believe these will be the most beneficial for you starting out, as they are for me. So let's talk about education development courses first. There's a ton of educational resources out there, way more than I could put in a single podcast. But I'm going to give you a couple to give you an idea, and include a link that'll take you to a page that's full of them in case none of these pique your interest. The first course, or series of courses, is called Boots to Business. There are several sections within this program, and while some are exclusive to transitioning service members on military installations, some are for veterans and their spouses of all eras off of military installations. I'm going to guess at like conference rooms and hotels and that kind of thing. So the brief overview of the program on the SBA, or Small Business Administration website, describes it as an entrepreneurial education and training program offered by the U.S. Small Business Administration, or SBA, as part of the Department of Defense Transition Assistance Program. The course includes an overview of entrepreneurship and applicable business ownership fundamentals. Active duty service members, including National Guard and Reserve, veterans of all eras, and spouses are eligible to participate. The standard portion of the program is simply called Boots to Business, and then the version that's open to everyone, or everyone else, is Boots to Business Reboot. But both are equally part of the program. So Boots to Business is the version that's only available to transitioning service members, and it says on its webpage, the 2-day Introduction to Entrepreneurship course introduces participants to key elements of small business ownership to assist in determining if entrepreneurship is a feasible and practical transition strategy. So it's not only is going to tell you about small business and give you tips on it, it's also going to help you decide if it's even something you want to do in the first place. That's really cool. I hadn't really thought of that before, like when I was thinking of these programs, like what they could be teaching you, that kind of thing. So it's kind of cool that they're going into that as well, because, people get excited when they think about starting a small business, but when you get into the hard stuff, maybe you decide, this sucks, I don't want to do it. So I think that's really, really cool. And on the webpage, it shows a class schedule for the month you're currently on, which is November right now, and on what base they're being held. Now, as a reservist, I could personally attend one of these courses as well, which is great in case you or someone you know is not active duty and would be interested in it. However, I feel that the standard version of the course is more geared to active duty members, and I respect that a lot. But moving on, we have Boots to Business Reboot, which is for everyone else. It appears to be basically the exact same class, but is off military installations, and on its page it shows pretty much the same thing. It shows you a calendar with the current month and upcoming classes within the month and where they're being held in the country. So, pretty cool. Then the next program I'm going to talk about is Veteran Institute for Procurement, or VIP. This program is not at all for newbies whatsoever. It's not for me, it's not for anyone that's just now starting out, because there are eligibility requirements, and one of them is you have to be at least an executive at a company, and that has already been in business for at least a year, which isn't going to apply to a lot of people. On the webpage, the first class in the program describes itself as a 3-day, 27-hour comprehensive certification program designed for veteran-owned businesses that want to enter or expand their business growth into the federal marketplace through best business practices. VIP Start, which is the name of the program, or the first class, is offered at no cost to participants. So it's another thing that's cool to, I guess that's beneficial to veterans, because it didn't cost you anything, apart from, your lodging and that kind of thing. But the course itself doesn't cost you any money. That's cool. And I know for a fact there are companies out there that compete for VA contracts, so I guess this is an avenue someone would go to get into that type of work. And since its launch in April 2016, 340 companies have graduated VIP Start, and based on average VIP Start, graduate companies are in business for 4 years with 2 full-time employees. So they're pretty they've maybe been out for a couple of years, and been going for a couple of years, but they don't have a huge roster of employees. And these companies increase the revenue by an average of 40% within their first year of graduation and 80% 2 years after graduation. So I'm guessing gives you some pretty good connections. You get to network with some people you wouldn't normally be able to find, which is pretty cool. And this was in fields like cybersecurity, business insurance, and contracting, to name a few. So federal work, yes, whatever comes to mind, you think of federal work. So if you're already an owner of a fairly established company that's looking to enter into the federal marketplace, that could be a really good gig for you, and it's free. It is held at the Bolger Hotel and Conference Center in Potomac, Maryland. I'm hoping I said that right. I also think it's important to note that this is an event where it's not permitted to use video and audio recording devices. I'm sure there's many types of conferences and events out there that allow this type of interaction, but VIP is not one of them. This isn't really the type of event I'd probably ever go to just because I'm not looking to get into federal work. But if you want to, and you can, or plan to, you totally should. And if you've already gone or you're going, then message me at some point if you have the time and tell me about it. It'd just be kind of cool to know what's going on. So those are the two of tons of minis of development programs available for veterans. Just in the respect for time here, I don't want to go into all of them. So in regards to courses, though, there are also courses available for spouses and disabled veterans as well. So link to the page for more information about all of them will be available below. Moving on, the next thing I'd like to discuss with you is the different opportunities for grants and loans. In case you're not sure the difference, which you'd be surprised, grants are given and don't have to be repaid, and loans are pretty much just that, a loan. I know this is fairly common knowledge, but you never know. Someone may have never dealt with either of those and may genuinely not know, and that is perfectly fine. Be aware that there are definitely other ways to get funding, such as investors and crowdfunding, but these are what I and many others think of, I'm sure, when thinking of getting money for something, college or business or whatever. So grants and loans can come from many places. However, the SBA, or Small Business Administration, doesn't give grant money or loan money. However, they do work with many different organizations to provide this. The only reason I mention it is so it's understood that while they can help you get money, the money comes from external sources like banks and not from the SBA. So it's the same but different. I just kind of figured somewhere along the way, either from your own personal searches for assistance in the future or in what I cover along in this course, it would be helpful to and reduce the possibility of confusion. Also, as a side note, I am only going to be covering the general ideas of these two forms of funding. There's an ungodly amount of information out there, and honestly, I don't know how to condense it all into one reasonably small podcast length. So in the future, I may do individual podcasts, though, if people want it, just for, expanded information. But because I'm only going to be doing general information, I'm going to be making the information as clear and easy to understand as possible without sacrificing the quality of your time and the podcast. So let's tackle grants first. Grants as a whole are better, in my opinion, than loans. I've had both of them in my life, so that's just going off of what I know in general. It's literally just money you don't have to ever pay back, and that's nice. It's like someone writing you a check and throwing it at you. There can be certain stipulations and requirements on how it can be used, but the bottom line is it's yours. You don't have to return it. So that's the upside. The downside is that grants are typically offered in much smaller amounts than loans, so while you may at some point qualify for a $200,000 business loan, to my knowledge, a small business grant like that is very unlikely to exist. I won't say it doesn't because I don't know everything, but I've never heard of such a thing. They also may be a little more difficult to obtain given their free nature, but that doesn't mean you can't get one. I've had them in the past for college and things like that. There's literally a grant for just about everything. So to make this simple, here's what the SBA says about grants on their website. The Small Business Administration works with different organizations to provide federal financial assistance, grants, community resources, for certain small businesses. If you can't find any grants that fit your profile, you can see if you qualify for any other funding programs or schedule to meet with a counselor to talk about financing your business. So if you're having issues finding one, try to think more of what your business does and what it could be categorized as instead of trying to find one based on what you're selling. It's basically the same idea, but different enough to make things difficult. And if that doesn't work, then don't be too frustrated as there are other viable options. I haven't found anything at the moment that would be useful to me in the grants department, so I understand. Also, the VA offers grant money, but only to nonprofit organizations for the most part, and there are strict policies on what they can be spent on. So unless you have a nonprofit organization, it probably isn't worth your time to look through that too much. That wasn't an enormous amount of information, but grants have a fairly simple idea. Get money and not pay it back. Of course, there's a lot more depth than that, but I'm not going to go into depth on that one because of its simple nature. Again, links are below if you want to find information further on it. All right, now let's take a step into the expansive world of business for a second. Now, there are a lot of loans out there for all different types of companies and sizes. However, given the theme of the podcast, I'm only going to go over small business loans. Again, if you'd like a lot of detail on the subject, I can make an individual podcast going into as much detail as I can in the future. Now, small business loans are freeing in the sense that they can have very high sizes with reasonable payback, but are also crippling in the way that they often require proof of a certain amount of revenue, either monthly or yearly, from your company, and a certain amount of time in business. So if you're first starting out, it won't be easy to get a sizable loan. Your personal credit score has to be fair. Something in the 600s should suffice, but it also may not. The eligibility is generally similar between lending organizations, but the specifics may and likely will vary. A good example of an organization offering veteran loans is Lending Club, if you've ever heard of them. Their small business loan for veterans has a term of 1 to 5 years with borrowing limits of $5,000 to $300,000. So the amount you can get is pretty good in its range, but your credit score has to be at least 600 and your business must have a yearly revenue of at least 50 grand. As you can see, loans can, or in the case of this type of loan, are for businesses that are already on their way, which is not too helpful to someone starting out from the ground up, kind of like me and probably a lot of you guys. But don't worry about that. There are also some that are made for people with only an idea. The way to obtain this, though, is through careful business planning, something that a counselor or someone like that can help you with. The benefit of having a company already is it's easier to track if you're trustworthy, I suppose. Something your personal credit score will do in the case of a loan from a business or person or organization for your business from the ground all the way up, I guess. It's a lot of information to take in, but this is only the beginning. And I am still at the start of all of this and learning little by myself. So in case you're freaking out internally or externally with skilled profanity, as I have a lot throughout this process, remember there are people that you can also talk to help that do this for a living. Counselors, I'm still learning how damn taxes work and who I should talk to in order to get that stuff squared away each time in the coming years. But the bottom line is don't try to do everything yourself unless you are really confident you can. I am not, so if you are, that's more power to you. If not, then just look for external help. Before moving on, I wanted to make a note that along with the links below to further information on everything I talk about today, there's also an article I found that gives the top 10 grants and loans for veteran small businesses, and I've gone through it and taken notes, and it could be really useful for some of you, so give that a glance if you're interested. And now we are on our final topic, business counselor. All right, so what is a business counselor? You may already know, but I wasn't really sure, so I Googled it to make sure. A business counselor works with clients and businesses in order to identify problems and improve performance. They analyze information such as budget data, performance expectations, and personnel evaluation to determine the source of a problem and assess areas for improvement. Alright, so going off of that, the SBA has this thing at the bottom of most of their pages that'll help you find these people near you for free advice and stuff like that. In the excerpt I just read a second ago, the definition, I guess, of business counselors, I feel it focused really heavily on businesses that are already moving along, but I felt it important to mention that they will also answer any questions you have about starting and maintaining a business. Personally, I'll be going to talk to one soon to make sure I'm on the right track in my business process, so seek this information out if it's necessary. I'm not sure what they will tell you and me for free versus what they will require you to pay for an actual meeting or something, or if there's even really any difference and if it would damage, if the only thing that would be different about it is if they can have direct action or not. Either way, though, it could very easily be beneficial, even if they just give you small details. And there's also outreach locations for veterans spread out, most likely on bases that are operated by the SBA, so look for those if necessary. And that about sums it up. That concludes this week's Veteran-Owned podcast. That was a lot of information, but it was only scratched the surface. So if you have questions or difficulty finding information you're looking for, feel free to message me on social media or in a comment if you're watching this on YouTube, and I will look for it for you or with you. I hope it also answered some of your questions and hopefully didn't just create more questions. And I would love to know your thoughts, both good and bad, on what you thought of this. And I really appreciate the support you guys have shown me already. This is the second podcast, and I've already gotten people messaging me and talking about it and saying they were excited. That feels really, really good. So, I have a lot of episodes planned, and I think you're really gonna like them. Which reminds me, next week's episode will be about some of the top veteran-founded startup companies in the U.S., which I'm super excited to talk about. We'll be talking about who they are, when the company was started, where they are now, and most importantly, what their company actually does. So it's going to be an awesome episode. Be sure to stay up to date on the Belligerent Apparel social media platforms, so you'll know all the details as they are released. That's just YouTube and whatever you're listening to this on, I guess. Unless it's Anchor, then check my Instagram or something like that, because, yeah. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it, and I will see you next week. So stay belligerent, always, and have a nice rest of your weekend.